Your mindset is either building your future or breaking it. How you think impacts how you lead, live, and the results you get. So the real question is, are you setting yourself up for success or struggle based on how you think? Years ago, I did not believe that my thoughts mattered that much. I actually was unaware of what I was thinking at any given time until I realized that it was the silent, well, it wasn't a silent voice, until I realized that it was the voice in my head that was dictating to me how I was showing up. Years ago, I did not think I had much to share with people. I did not think that my voice mattered that much. And it was because there was this running thought in my mind that constantly said, nobody needs to hear what you have to say. And you're probably wondering, well, Shiteria, where did that thought come from? Where was that seed initially planted from? And I remember hearing as a child that children are to be seen and not heard. I remember hearing things as a child about how women were supposed to show up societally, and all of that impacted how I showed up on a daily basis. Whether I was with friends, with my family, whether I was in school, whatever that thing was that I was doing, I was impacted by it. Whether I was at work, there was always this nagging internal thought that I should be silent. I remember sitting in a meeting at work as a district manager, and we were discussing something that I thought was really simple and that we should have had a solution for in 2 seconds. But as I sat around this roundtable discussion, mind you, I am not giving any input in the moment, but I am a witness or supposed to be a participant in this meeting. And I'm sitting around the table, and essentially we're talking about how to communicate specific information to our stores so that it's not redundant. And as I'm sitting here, I'm listening to one person after the other give their thoughts and input. And to me, the answer is so obvious, but I sat there in silence. Can any of you relate to where you have something of value, something of substance to give, but yet you remain silent because there is this internal thought within you that tells you to remain silent? So I had this thought that would always tell me, listen, nobody needs to hear what you have to say. And so anytime there was an opportunity for me to speak up and to give my opinion or to give a suggestion or to reference something, I would remain silent. I would remain little. And so this discussion is going on and on and on. And I'm like, y'all is wasting my time. I have a 3-hour drive back home. So I raised my little hand and I said, well, why are we doing any of this? Why don't we just do X, Y, Z? And I don't remember specifically what the answer was that I gave, but I remember a director looked at me and she turned and she said, why did it take you so long to say that? We could have been done with this discussion way long ago if you would have just said that. And I thought to myself, well, it was the simplest answer. I was sure that this was a joke. And Ashton Kutcher was going to jump out and say, gotcha. But the truth of the matter was, because of the amount of negative self-talk I had had throughout my life up until that point in my career, silence was all I knew. And I don't know if you can relate to being a person who shows up physically, but yet you are silent and not demonstrating that you carry the answer, that you are the solution to the problem. And if you can relate to that, if you can agree with that, then I want to challenge you to make some shifts in the way that you think. And the very first shift I want you to make is an understanding that your mindset shapes your experiences. I sat at that table as a victim. I'm an executive in a multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar organization, and I am sitting at the table like a victim. I'm sitting at this table and I'm like, this meeting is long, this meeting is drawn out for no reason, but yet I would always remain silent because my mindset told me that what I had to say did not matter. But if I would have spoken up sooner, I could have shaved minutes or even hours off of our meeting. But because I was so accustomed to being silent, to just showing up physically and not taking up space, I wasted countless amount of time. I wasted other people's time by not showing up in my brilliance. Each one of us carries a level of brilliance that when we do not tap into it, it causes issues in other people's lives. My director turned to me and said, "Why did it take you that long to say what you just said?" She was like, "I know that this is not the first moment you thought of this. You had that answer for how long?" Right? And she didn't, say it to that level, but basically what she said to me was, "I knew you had the answer the whole time, and you just sat here looking at us talk about this, and we wasted so much time." So you not showing up, you not thinking of yourself as carrying the amount of value, as being the asset that you are, you not thinking that you have something to offer is negatively impacting the people around you. So your mindset matters. What is that internal conversation that you are having that is impacting how you are experiencing life? I'll give you another example. I was pregnant, and again, I'm an executive in this company, and I'm a very selective eater. I will not always eat what is presented because either I don't like it because I don't really prefer certain things, or I just have a preference, right? And so I remember being pregnant, and I sent an email to one of the assistants about lunch because I would always ask, "Okay, well, what are we going to have for lunch?" And she would tell me, "Just let me know what you want and I'll get it for you." Or I would ask, "What are we going to have for breakfast?" She said, "Let me know and I'll get it for you." And I remember sending this email, and I sounded like a beggar in the email after I sent it. I reread it and I said, "Girl, what? Why do you sound like you are begging for food?" But the email said something along these lines. It said, "Can I please, if it's not too much of a bother, have some mandarins for breakfast?" Ma'am, she already told you to tell her what you want. We have not because we ask not, and we don't ask because of how we think. And how we are thinking is impacting how we show up. I didn't show up believing that I was going to get this answer. I showed up as if my life was an interruption to hers. Even though she initially told me, "Ma'am, tell me, whenever you come to this meeting, I want to make sure you have food." She was concerned that I was not eating because I would go to the lunchroom and then I'd come back and I would have nothing. And she's like, "Well, wait, you're not eating? Make sure you come and you tell me what you want and I'll make sure you have food." If I didn't like something, they'd be like, "Okay, well, there's something in the other office. There's something in another break room." Like, she would always look for ways to make sure I was fed. And I, the person who needed to eat, did not hold myself in high enough esteem to say, "I'm going to set myself up to succeed. I'm going to set myself up to have the meal in advance because of the way I thought about me." What internal conversations are you having that is blocking your blessing, that is preventing you from moving forward, that's preventing you from seeing you as valuable enough to take up space, to fill the room? So your thoughts, your mindset The way you are thinking is impacting how you're experiencing life. I didn't have to have such a negative experience when it came to eating food at work. I could have always been eating something I enjoyed if when I showed up, I knew that I was valuable enough to eat. Right? Like, what thought pattern caused me to remain silent about my preference of food? And I'll tell you, it's because a lot of times, because I was such a selective eater, and people, as a child, nobody said, ma'am, you're a selective eater. They would say you're a picky eater. They would say I was tough to eat, tough to get food for, or, just little things that people around you say. Not necessarily my parents. My mother was really good about knowing, like, okay, I don't like this. She would trick me a little bit. Mom, if you're watching this, I know you were tricking me, but she would trick me a little bit and like put certain things in my food. But as a parent, I can understand why you would do that, desiring for your child to have nutrients, and then also understanding that my child is sometimes saying she doesn't like something and she has not tried it, because that was me often. I'd be like, oh, I don't like that, but I never ate it. Never had it a day in my life. And so my mom would do little things to be like, okay, I know you like this, or I know you would like it if you at least tried it. So my parents never like made me feel bad about my preference when it came to eating. But at some point in my life, I have had a negative experience when it came to eating, where people be like, oh, you don't eat that? Oh, that's weird. Oh, XYZ. And so that experience impacted how I thought and how I then experienced the rest of my life. And it could have only been one experience, right? But sometimes one experience, one person's comment can impact how you think for the rest of your life. And so I want to challenge you to think about how you're thinking about your thoughts. In this season and for the rest of your life, it's important that you are policing your thoughts. You need to understand and know, is my thought an asset or is it a liability? Is it adding to my future? Is it adding to my capacity as a leader? Is it adding to the results that I'm going to get? Or is it taking away? Is it depleting me? Is it causing me to have a negative balance in my view of me? Because your thoughts will either build you up or they will break you down. Okay, and so I want you to start policing your thoughts. Sometimes I'll have songs running in my mind from 20 years ago, songs that I have not sung in years, but yet they are playing in the recesses of my mind. If that has ever happened to you, type recess in the comments, type recess. If you have ever had a song to play in your mind that you haven't heard in years, I want you to type recess in the comments, because a lot of times we have these songs, this music, all these things, these thoughts are playing over and over and over again in our minds. And then it's impacting the decisions we make. It impacts the food we want to eat. It impacts the conversations we're having. So if you're not policing your thoughts, if you don't know, I'm bigger than the thoughts that I'm thinking, you're going to allow the thoughts that you are thinking to overtake you. And if those thoughts overtake you, you're not going to do what you were meant to do. You're not going to lead the way you were meant to lead, and you're not going to have the impact that you were meant to have. The last thing I want to cover in this video before we end is about the level of intentionality that is required in order for you to show up differently in this season than you have in the last season. So we've talked about how your thoughts impact how you experience life. We talked about how it is so important for you to monitor and to police your thoughts, because if they are not an asset and they are instead a liability, it's depleting you daily. But now I want to talk about how you can intentionally make sure you are making the right deposits into your mind. Because you are powerful enough to make mindset deposits that are going to shift the trajectory of your life. Every morning, or almost every morning, there are some days where I miss this intentional activity. But every morning, or almost every morning, I have 2 different journals. I journal, and then I also write out a list of 5 things I'm grateful for. And then I write out 5 things that I am. So I could, for example, write, I'm grateful for the love of God in my life, or I'm grateful for the life of my daughter, or I'm grateful for every opportunity that I have had. Whatever that place of gratitude is, I write it down. And then I write affirmations for myself. I tell myself I am fearfully and wonderfully made, because I need to be intentional about how I think about myself. I need to be intentional about what I speak over myself. So as I'm writing it, it now becomes a new thought that is implanted. It's a new seed that can be watered and grown within me. And so if you are not intentionally practicing gratitude, if you are not intentionally speaking over yourself and having these great conversations with you about who you are, then I want you to start doing that. If you are having gratitude conversations, if you are having great conversations about who you are, I want you to comment gratitude in the comments. Let me know that you are speaking well over yourself. And if you are not, I want you to write, I'm starting today. I'm starting today. Because when I started journaling and positioning myself in the place of gratitude, it changed the way I experienced life, because now I'm intentional about the deposit that I'm making in my mindset. I am intentional about how I am showing up and thinking, as opposed to letting thoughts come in that did not have the right to be there. So that negative conversation, the conversation that's telling me nobody needs to hear what you have to say, or nobody wants you in their presence, whatever that negative thing is, instead of allowing that to have free course and free reign in my life, I was deliberate. I was intentional about the thoughts that I'm thinking. I am intentional. I am deliberate about what's going to be in my mind. And if I find, because there are still moments where songs from 20 years ago, 30 years ago pop up in my mind, and I'm like, where did you come from? Because this is not that. You can't party and take up space in my mind any longer. You don't have that right. And so I want you to be intentional about what you're thinking. I want you to be intentional about how what you're thinking is impacting how you're feeling, because your emotions are a side effect of what you are thinking. And a lot of times we're uncomfortable in places, we are unsure in places because of the thoughts that we are thinking. And so in this season, you are going to show up as the best version of yourself, but it's going to require you to think differently about you. Listen, I pray this video blessed you. Tell me about it in the comments, and I will see you in another video. Bye.